Let's move on now to the Las Vegas Raiders in our free agency review series. But before we do that, this is our last series of the 2023 free agency portion of the offseason, which means we will be pivoting to previewing the 2023 season. That includes prediction videos, division winner predictions, game recaps, game previews throughout the season. So if you want to see more Raiders content, more Raiders game previews, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and also ring the bell to get notified every time Raiders content comes out. And Ryan, let's get into it here.
Let's do it.
The Raiders were by far the busiest team in free agency this entire offseason so far. There were so many additions that they added, also people that left. It was absolutely insane.
They almost, they didn't have a complete roster turnover.
It was the closest thing.
Yeah, did they make the playoffs last year?
No.
Okay.
They were 6. Yeah.
Okay. They were in the playoffs 2 years ago. They were pretty close to making the playoffs this year, right? A few game results go their way and they're in the playoff mix, right? And they just completely flipped it on its head and brought in a bunch of new players. So let's go ahead. Let's get into it. I mean, we got a lot to talk about. Not a lot of time to do it. So obviously Davante Adams was not one of the pieces that they moved on from. But they did they lost Mac Hollins. They brought in Jakobi Meyers. They're keeping Hunter Renfrow in that receiver room. And then they drafted Trey Tucker as well, who I expect to be on that roster because they spent a third-round pick on him. And so offensive line, I think, is staying relatively the same. I don't really think that there's too many moves there. But then you look at Austin Hooper, a new tight end addition, Michael Mayer, new tight end addition. And then the big one is the Darren Waller trade that they moved on from Darren Waller. So already a ton of moves, and we haven't even gotten to the quarterback room yet.
Yeah. No, and so then moving on from Derek Carr as well, adding on Jimmy Garoppolo. They have franchise tag Josh Jacobs. But I will say I'm seeing this now, and I just kind of – is this as similar to the Saquon Barkley situation? Has Josh Jacobs not signed the franchise tag?
Yeah, I don't think he signed it yet.
Okay. So I was curious. I thought he did. But either way, I don't see why he won't be a Raider in this upcoming season. And with everything, when you look at this offense, if it wasn't for Josh Jacobs' performance and also that offensive line performance, this could have been a much worse season for the Las Vegas Raiders in 2022. But it is weird saying as a 6-11 team, they almost made the playoffs, but because nearly every loss was a one possession loss.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's, to me, I think you look at Josh McDaniels getting another crack at being the head coach. There's a lot of turnover here. And if you look at what he did in Denver when he was the head coach there, he came in, Jay Cutler, Brandon Marshall already had an established connection. When Josh McDaniels took over for the Raiders, he goes out, he gets Davante Adams for Derek Carr. In Denver, he then alienates Jay Cutler, which he did to Derek Carr again. Brandon Marshall is unhappy with how that situation played out. Davante Adams has voiced his opinion on how he's unhappy on how that situation played out. And then in that same first offseason, there was a lot of roster turnover when Josh McDaniels was in Denver and when he was in Vegas. So I'm really curious how this is going to work out for the Las Vegas Raiders, because history has shown that when Josh McDaniels does this, it doesn't always end well. So,
I can see he's wanting to put his thumbprint on the team. It is, but you're right though. Is there going to be any alienation of it? And I know that there's also some concern as well with Jimmy Garoppolo and his physical. I believe he didn't pass a physical, and so how is that going to be? What stipulations does that add on to the team? Is Brian Hoyer going to be the quarterback, or is Aiden O'Connell going to be the guy that they end up going with? Probably not. I'm sure that can get figured out, but maybe just midsummer offseason clickbait news, but it is something that could like potentially affect also getting his reps with Devontae Adams and everything.
Yeah, the reports for Jimmy's foot does not look good. So that's definitely something to keep your eye on. But let's get into the defensive depth chart here. So 2 elite pass rushers already, Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, right? And then they go out and then they draft Tyree Wilson here in the first round. That, I mean, is a scary rotation of edge rushers.
Yeah.
Up there with the best in the league. Chandler Jones is getting a little bit older, but I think he still had a double-digit sack season last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's really honestly anyone on the opposite side of Max Crosby, and him and Tyree Wilson can kind of rotate through what they can rotate reps and split time as Jones gets a little bit older, and then Tyree Wilson can learn and then become that number 2 guy to Max Crosby, because Crosby's just an absolute beast. It's actually crazy that they got him in the 4th round, and he's arguably one of the best edge rushers in the entire league. And so where I'm most curious though about with this team is going to be in the secondary position. They added a lot of new people to this team, such as Marcus Epps as well in the safety position. Then also seeing how Trayvon Moore keeps developing, David Long Jr. as well from the Rams. So there's a lot of there's just that to me was the one where I remember doing all of our mock drafts. Is there were so many different ways the Raiders could go, and I kept leaning towards potentially secondary, because that just seems like that is a big question mark for them. And when you look at that division, I mean, the Chiefs are going to be the Chiefs. I mean, they're just going to be passing the ball all over you. The Chargers now have, Mike Williams and Quentin Johnson, the outside receivers, Keenan Allen as well in the slot. I mean, 3 great receivers. You still have Josh Palmer out there as well. Denver, I mean, if their quarterback can play well, they have 4 really good receivers if you include Marvin Mims. So it's that's 6 games where you're guaranteed to go up against a really good receiver room. How do they match up? And that's where I thought that they fell short sometimes. And also then too, just being in the AFC is loaded with talent. And so many teams just have good receiving rooms in general. So that is where I'm very curious about with this team moving into the 2023 season.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get into what I think a successful season would look like for the Las Vegas Raiders. And for me, they need to come out and be what they were a couple years ago, right? They won a lot more of those close games 2 years ago than they did last year. And I think you want to see Josh McDaniels' vision with all of this roster turnover really kind of come to fruition and be visible on field, right? So I think if they need to be going 9-8, they have a pretty tough schedule. That, like you said, that division is pretty tough. And they're not going to get, I don't think they're going to get 2 free wins against Denver this year. So that is going to be really interesting to watch. I think they need to be back in playoff contention again, at the very least, if not in a wild card spot.
I think playoff contention, similar to Denver, it's going to have to be. I mean, with so much turnover, it's hard to really predict. But I think if they can be in playoff contention, similar to what our prediction was for Denver, week 16 games matter, week 17 games matter. And that's where I think that it could be. It could be chalked up as a positive season, because last year, yes, you look at the record, but can't really state it enough. It's like last year was a good year for the Raiders. They just couldn't make the final play. They just couldn't make the final play, and that's what really hurt them.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think it's going to be an interesting season for the Raiders. I think that's going to wrap up this episode of the Tracy Take. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below on what your favorite offseason addition was for the Las Vegas Raiders. Was it a free agent? Was it a draftee? Let us know down below. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.